The dog who is too kind for duty. The sun rose over the police academy training grounds, casting golden hues on the neatly trimmed grass. A line of disciplined, well-trained German shepherds and Belgian Malinois stood in perfect formation, their eyes locked on their handlers, awaiting the next command. Among them stood a bright-eyed, golden-furred Labrador named Charlie. But unlike the others, his tail wagged furiously, and his gaze wasn't one of steely focus. It was filled with warmth and excitement. Charlie had been chosen for the elite K9 training program, a dream for any working dog. Ever since he was a pup, he had an unmatched enthusiasm for life. He would bound around, chasing butterflies and greeting every human with a friendly lick. While his trainers admired his spirit, they knew deep down that he was different. And as the days of training continued, that difference became clear. When the command "stay" was given, the other dogs froze in place, their muscles locked in disciplined precision. Charlie, on the other hand, tried his best. His ears perked up, his paws planted firmly on the ground. But within seconds, his tail would start wagging uncontrollably. Then, unable to contain his joy, he would spring up, running toward his trainer, tongue out, ready for affection. "Charlie, no," the instructor groaned, shaking his head as the other trainers chuckled. It wasn't just the staying still that was the problem. During chase drills, where police dogs were meant to pursue and subdue targets, Charlie took a completely different approach. Instead of tackling the suspect, he would wag his tail, sniff them excitedly, and then roll onto his back, waiting for belly rubs. Despite months of training, Charlie just couldn't shake his nature. He loved people too much. He was meant for kindness, not confrontation. Eventually, the day came that no K9 recruit ever wanted to hear. The head trainer sighed and made the decision. "Charlie," he said softly, patting the dog's head, "you're a great dog, but you're just too friendly. You're not cut out for this kind of work." The words were gentle, but they carried a weight of finality. Charlie had failed. He had been rejected. The other dogs continued their training, moving up in rank, while Charlie watched from the sidelines, his ears drooping in disappointment. His dream of being a police dog was over. Or so he thought. The CHNCENCONTR a Hollywood legend. Charlie was sent to a shelter for retired police dogs, a place where K9s who had aged out of service or failed training found new homes. While other dogs there were eventually adopted by families looking for security, Charlie had a harder time. People wanted fierce, protective dogs. They weren't looking for one who would lick a burglar instead of stopping them. Days passed, then weeks. Charlie had all but given up hope. And then, one day, a black motorcycle roared into the parking lot. The man who stepped off was tall, dressed in a simple black leather jacket and jeans. His dark hair was tousled, and behind his sunglasses there was an air of mystery about him. The man walked into the shelter, scanning the dogs. The moment Charlie saw him, his tail started wagging. Something about the man's presence felt different, not like the stern, commanding officers from the academy, but something gentler. Keanu Reeves knelt down in front of Charlie, pushing his sunglasses up onto his head. "Hey, buddy," he said in his smooth, calming voice. Charlie, unable to contain himself, jumped up and licked Keanu's face. A deep chuckle escaped from the actor's lips. "Wow, you're friendly." The shelter volunteer smiled. "Yeah, that's Charlie. He was in police training, but he got fired for being too nice." Keanu tilted his head, intrigued. "Too nice, huh?" He scratched Charlie's ears, and the dog melted under his touch. "That's a first." The volunteer shrugged. "He's just not cut out for serious work, but he's got a lot of heart." Keanu's gaze lingered on Charlie. Then something in his expression shifted, as if an idea had struck him. "I'll take him." The shelter worker blinked. "Are you sure?" "He's not exactly." "I'm sure." Keanu grinned. "I think Charlie and I are gonna get along just fine." The mysterious Joe. Charlie's new home was nothing like the academy. Keanu took him everywhere, on film sets, on hikes, and even to quiet late-night drives through Los Angeles. But it wasn't just a pet-owner relationship. There was something more. One evening, as the sun set over the Hollywood Hills, Keanu sat on his porch, staring at Charlie thoughtfully. "You know, Bud," he mused, ruffling the dog's fur, "people always think I'm some action hero in real life. But I don't like violence either." Charlie's ears perked up, as if he understood. Keanu exhaled. "There's this job I've been offered. Something off the record. Something that needs a gentler touch." The next day, Keanu made some calls. Charlie didn't understand what was happening, but he could sense something exciting in the air. Keanu dressed him up in a sleek, custom-made harness and led him to a black SUV. As they drove through the city, Charlie looked out the window, his tail thumping against the seat. Finally, they arrived at a discreet-looking house in a quiet neighborhood. When the door opened, Charlie was greeted by a pair of wide, teary eyes. A little girl. She gasped, her sadness momentarily forgotten. "A doggy," she whispered. Keanu knelt beside her. "This is Charlie. He's here for you." The girl hesitated, then reached out her small hand. Charlie didn't move aggressively. He simply wagged his tail and licked her fingers. The woman standing behind the girl, her mother, let out a deep, shuddering breath. She hasn't smiled in weeks. Not since the accident. Keanu nodded solemnly. "That's why I brought him." Charlie wasn't meant to be a police dog, but he was meant for something just as important. A therapy dog. That night, as the little girl curled up next to him, her tiny fingers buried in his fur, Charlie knew. This was his true calling, and his adventure with Keanu Reeves was only just beginning. Charlie's NEU mission. A doggy with a purpose. The soft glow of a bedside lamp illuminated the small room, casting gentle shadows on the walls. The little girl, Mia, was curled up next to Charlie, her tiny arms wrapped around his golden fur. It had been only a few hours since they had met, but something magical had happened, something Keanu Reeves had hoped for. Mia, who had spent weeks trapped in grief, had smiled. Keanu sat in the corner of the room, watching the peaceful scene unfold. He wasn't a stranger to loss. He understood how pain could wrap itself around a person, suffocating them in silence. He had lived it himself. That was why he knew, deep in his heart, that Charlie was no ordinary dog. He had been rejected from the police force for being too kind. But in that moment, as Mia clung to him like he was her last lifeline, Keanu realized that Charlie's kindness wasn't a flaw. It was his greatest strength. A doggy with a NEU purpose. The next morning, Mia awoke to find Charlie still curled up beside her. His warm, rhythmic breathing filled the room with a sense of calm. She sat up, rubbing her eyes, and then giggled when Charlie let out a sleepy yawn and stretched his paws toward her. "Good morning, Charlie," she whispered. The golden retriever's tail thumped against the bed, and he nuzzled against her, as if he had been waiting for her to wake up. Mia's mother, Olivia, stood by the door, her eyes filled with emotions she hadn't been able to express in weeks. She turned to Keanu, her voice shaking. "She's different today. It's like she's herself again." Keanu nodded knowingly. Charlie has that effect on people. It had been Olivia's husband, Mia's father, who had passed away in a tragic accident. Since then, the little girl had barely spoken, rarely leaving her room. The weight of loss had crushed her, and nothing seemed to bring her back from the depths of sorrow. Until now. Keanu watched as Mia and Charlie played together, rolling on the bed. The little girl's laughter filled the house like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. This was what Charlie was meant for. The next step, a greater plan. Later that afternoon, Keanu took Charlie for a walk, his thoughts spinning. It wasn't enough for Charlie to just help one person. If this dog had the ability to heal hearts, why not share his gift with the world? Pulling out his phone, Keanu dialed a familiar number. "Hey, it's me," he said when the person answered. "I have something special I want to talk to you about." Within a few hours, Keanu and Charlie arrived at a sleek, modern office in downtown Los Angeles. Inside, a woman in a well-tailored suit greeted them warmly. "Keanu," she smiled, shaking his hand. "It's always good to see you." "Good to see you too, Grace." He nodded toward Charlie. "I think you're going to want to meet this guy." Grace knelt down, studying the dog with curious eyes. Charlie, always eager to make new friends, licked her hand immediately. She laughed. "Well, he's definitely friendly." "That's the thing," Keanu said, watching as Charlie wagged his tail. "He was trained as a police dog, but they let him go because he was too kind. But I think that kindness is exactly what the world needs." Grace tilted her head, intrigued. "What are you getting at?" Keanu leaned forward. "I want to start something. A program, maybe. Therapy dogs for people who need them. Kids, veterans, people going through tough times. Charlie's already changed one life. I think he can do a lot more." Grace's expression shifted from curiosity to something deeper. "You know, that's not a bad idea." Charlie's. A few days later, Keanu's idea had taken root. With the help of Grace, who was a well-connected PR expert, they decided to introduce Charlie to the world in a way that no one could ignore. They made a video. It was a simple, heartfelt montage of Charlie's journey, from his police training days to his rejection, and finally, to the moment he found his true purpose. The footage of Mia laughing and hugging Charlie was enough to bring tears to anyone's eyes. Keanu himself narrated the video. "Some are born to fight. Some are born to lead. But some are born to heal. Charlie isn't just a dog. He's a reminder that sometimes kindness is the most powerful force of all." The video was posted online, and within hours, it went viral. People from all over the world shared it, moved by Charlie's story. Celebrities, influencers, and everyday people alike were commenting, sending messages, and asking how they could support Charlie's new mission. News outlets picked up the story. Headlines read, "Keanu Reeves adopts too friendly police dog and gives him a new purpose. Meet Charlie, the dog who was too kind for the police, but perfect for the world." Keanu smiled as he scrolled through the messages. "We did it, buddy," he murmured, scratching Charlie's ears. Charlie just wagged his tail, as if he had known all along. A call from someone unexpected. A few days after the video went viral, Keanu's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, his eyebrows raising slightly at the name flashing on it. It was a private number. Curious, he answered. "Hello." A deep, authoritative voice came through the speaker. "Mr. Reeves, this is Chief Reynolds from the LAPD." Keanu frowned slightly. "Chief, what can I do for you?" There was a pause before the chief spoke again. "It's about Charlie." Keanu tensed. "If you're calling to say you want him back." "No," Chief Reynolds interrupted. "That's not why I'm calling." Another pause. "We saw the video," the chief admitted, "and I think we made a mistake." Keanu stayed silent, waiting. "The truth is, we could have put Charlie in a different unit," the chief continued. "But we were so focused on what we thought a police dog should be, we didn't see what he could be. That was our failure." Keanu leaned against the counter, processing the words. "What are you saying, Chief?" he asked. The chief sighed. "I'm saying, we'd like to support your program, if you're willing to work with us." Keanu couldn't help but smile. "Let's talk." The beginning of something bigger. Over the next few months, Keanu, Charlie, and a dedicated team worked tirelessly to expand their mission. They partnered with hospitals, veteran organizations, schools, and even law enforcement to place therapy dogs in places they were needed most. Charlie became the face of the movement. Everywhere he went, he brought joy, comfort, and healing. One day, As Keanu watched Charlie play with a group of children in a cancer ward, he felt something stir deep inside him. Maybe he had taken Charlie in to help him. But in the end, it was Charlie who had helped everyone. And this was only the beginning. Charlie's Impact, a movement of kindness. The city of Los Angeles was alive with the buzz of something new. Billboards, social media feeds, and news reports were filled with the image of a golden-furred Labrador with warm, friendly eyes. Charlie. His story had spread across the world like wildfire. What had started as a simple act of kindness from Keanu Reeves had transformed into something much bigger than either of them could have imagined. The Charlie's Kindness Initiative was no longer just an idea. It had become a full-fledged movement. But with every great movement came new challenges. The overwhelming response. Keanu sat at his desk, stacks of letters, emails, and messages piled up in front of him. Requests poured in from families, hospitals, schools, and even law enforcement agencies wanting to be part of the program. A call came in from a children's hospital in Chicago. "We have kids here fighting battles no child should ever have to face," the administrator said. "Charlie's story has given them hope. We'd love for him to visit." Another message was from a veteran support group in Texas. "Many of our soldiers return home with invisible wounds. They've seen things no one should see, and they struggle every day. Charlie reminds them that kindness still exists. Is there any way he could come here?" Keanu ran his fingers through his hair, overwhelmed. There was only one Charlie. How could they possibly reach everyone who needed him? Then, as if sensing his worry, Charlie nudged his hand and licked his fingers. Keanu chuckled. "You always know when I need a little encouragement, don't you, buddy?" Charlie wagged his tail, his eyes sparkling with energy. And in that moment, Keanu had an idea. Training a new generation of therapy dogs. If one dog could make such an impact, what if there were more? The solution wasn't just Charlie visiting places, it was training more dogs just like him. Keanu called up his trusted friend and expert dog trainer, Marcus Hayes, a retired canine officer with years of experience. If anyone could take on this challenge, it was him. Marcus arrived at Keanu's home later that day, wearing his usual worn-out leather jacket and rugged boots. He was a man of few words, but his respect for Keanu and his newfound admiration for Charlie was clear. "So," Marcus said, kneeling down to pet Charlie, "you want to turn this guy into a teacher, huh?" Keanu nodded. "Not just a teacher, a leader. If we can train more dogs like him, we can help more people." Marcus scratched his beard, thinking, "It won't be easy. Not every dog has what Charlie has." "We don't need every dog," Keanu said. "We just need the right ones." Marcus sighed, then grinned. "All right, let's do it." The first reached. Within weeks, a facility had been set up, a peaceful training center on the outskirts of Los Angeles, surrounded by rolling hills and fresh air. Dogs from shelters, abandoned rescues, and even some retired police dogs who didn't quite fit the standard mold were brought in. Marcus assessed each one carefully. Some were too aggressive, others were too timid. But then, they found the ones who had that special spark, the ones who, like Charlie, had hearts full of love. A shy border collie named Luna, who had been abandoned as a puppy. A retired police dog named Max, who had been dismissed for being too gentle on the job. A three-legged mixed breed named Rocky, who had survived an accident but never lost his spirit. And many more. Charlie, as if understanding his new role, took his job seriously. He led by example, showing the other dogs how to comfort people, how to sit patiently while children hugged them, and how to sense emotions before humans even spoke a word. It was the beginning of something incredible. A cellular paradise from a Hollywood legend. One evening, as Keanu was winding down after a long day at the training center, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen. It was an unknown number. He hesitated for a second before answering. "Hello." A deep, unmistakable voice responded. "Keanu." "It's Morgan Freeman." Keanu blinked, momentarily caught off guard. "Morgan? Hey. Wow. This is a surprise." Morgan chuckled, his rich voice filling the air. "I saw the story about Charlie. I have to say, it moved me. That's a special dog you have there." Keanu smiled. "Yeah, he is." Morgan's tone became serious. "Listen, I have a proposition for you. I want to help. I want to be part of this." Keanu sat up straighter. "What are you thinking?" Morgan explained his vision. He wanted to fund and narrate a documentary about Charlie and the movement. Something that would show the world what was happening and inspire even more people to get involved. Keanu listened carefully. When Morgan finished, there was only one thing left to say. "Let's do it. The deal that changed everything." Over the next few months, a professional film crew followed Charlie, Keanu, and the new therapy dog recruits as they traveled across the country. The documentary captured Charlie visiting children's hospitals, where sick kids laughed and played with him, momentarily forgetting their pain. Veterans with PTSD, who found comfort in the gentle presence of therapy dogs. Schools where children struggling with anxiety opened up in ways they never had before. Survivors of natural disasters, who had lost everything but found solace in the warmth of a dog's unconditional love. The footage was raw, real, emotional, and when Morgan Freeman narrated the final scene, his voice was steady, powerful. In a world that often seems cold, where kindness can feel rare, one dog reminded us of something simple. Sometimes, love doesn't need words. Sometimes, love has 4 legs, a wagging tail, and a heart big enough to heal the world. The documentary premiered in select theaters and on major streaming platforms. The reaction was overwhelming. Donations poured in. More therapy dogs were trained. Families across the country reached out, wanting to share their own stories of how Charlie had inspired them. The world had fallen in love with a dog who was once considered too friendly. A special moment at the AWARDS Months later, Keanu and Charlie were invited to a major humanitarian award ceremony. The documentary had been nominated for multiple awards, and the initiative had raised millions to expand therapy dog programs across the nation. As Keanu walked the red carpet, Charlie trotted beside him, wearing a small bounty. The cameras flashed, celebrities and journalists alike stopping to pet him. Inside the grand hall, the moment arrived. The winner for Best Inspirational Documentary, Charlie's Kindness Initiative. The crowd erupted into applause. Keanu walked onto the stage, Charlie at his side. He took a deep breath and looked out at the sea of faces. "I've played a lot of roles in my life," he began. "But this isn't a role. This is real. Charlie taught me something that I think we all need to remember. Kindness isn't weakness. It's strength." He paused, glancing down at Charlie, who wagged his tail. And sometimes, the ones we least expect to make a difference end up changing the world. The audience rose to their feet in a standing ovation. Charlie, unaware of the grandeur of the moment, simply sat there, looking up at Keanu with those same loving eyes that had changed so many lives. And in that moment, Keanu knew. This was just the beginning. Charlie's Lee J.C. The doji hu to yu chi di nilodans. The echoes of applause still rang in Keanu Reeves' ears as he stepped off the grand stage of the humanitarian award ceremony, Charlie trotting loyally beside him. The moment had been surreal. A standing ovation, tears in the eyes of celebrities, journalists, and everyday people who had been touched by the story of a dog that was once deemed too kind for the police force. But Keanu wasn't thinking about awards. He was thinking about what came next. Because for Charlie, this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. The Naichi that chi changed ev eng. Later that evening, Keanu sat on his hotel balcony, gazing over the sparkling Los Angeles skyline. A warm breeze carried the sounds of the city below, the hum of traffic, distant laughter, and the occasional siren. Charlie lay beside him, head resting on Keanu's foot, his golden fur glowing under the moonlight. Keanu sighed, rubbing his temples. The movement had exploded beyond his wildest dreams. Hospitals, schools, law enforcement agencies, and even international organizations wanted to be a part of it. Requests were pouring in at an overwhelming pace. One man and one dog couldn't possibly do it all. And that's when his phone buzzed. Keanu glanced at the screen. It was Marcus, the retired K-9 trainer who had helped train Charlie's recruits. "Hey man," Keanu answered, his voice tired but warm. "Keanu, you need to get to the center, right now." Keanu frowned. "Marcus, it's late. What's going on?" Marcus' voice was tense. "You just need to see this." Keanu felt Charlie stir beside him, as if sensing the urgency. Without hesitation, he grabbed his jacket. "All right, we're on our way." ACLE at the training center. By the time Keanu and Charlie arrived at the training facility, the place was buzzing with energy. Trainers, volunteers, and staff were gathered in the main hall, all focused on a live video stream being broadcasted on a large screen. Marcus rushed over. "You're not gonna believe this." Keanu followed his gaze to the screen. The video feed showed a war-torn refugee camp overseas, one that had been struggling with displaced families, children who had lost everything, and communities ravaged by conflict. In the middle of the camp stood a dog, a golden-furred Labrador. It was one of Charlie's first trainees, Luna, the rescued border collie lab mix. Keanu's heart pounded as he watched. Luna was surrounded by children, their faces once clouded with fear and sadness now glowing with joy. She wagged her tail, licking their hands, nuzzling against them as they laughed and hugged her. The footage panned to a relief worker, speaking into the camera. "Since Luna arrived, the children have changed. They smile again. They talk again. She's brought a light into this camp that we never thought we'd see." Keanu swallowed hard. Marcus placed a hand on his shoulder. "Charlie started this. And now, it's bigger than all of us." Keanu looked down at Charlie, who sat beside him, ears perked up as if he, too, understood. Charlie had sparked something unstoppable. An unexpected visit from the White House. A week later, Keanu was in the middle of a meeting at the training center when an assistant rushed in, her face pale. "You need to take this call," she said, barely containing her excitement. Keanu took the phone. "This is Keanu." A warm, authoritative voice greeted him. "Mr. Reeves, this is President James Caldwell." Keanu nearly dropped the phone. The President of the United States was calling him. I'm honored, sir," Keanu said, regaining his composure. The President chuckled. "No, Mr. Reeves, the honor is mine. I've been following Charlie's story. My wife and I watched the documentary together, and, well, it moved us both deeply." Keanu smiled, glancing at Charlie, who was busy playfully nudging a volunteer. The President continued, "I want to officially invite you and Charlie to the White House. We'd like to recognize the impact you've made and discuss ways we can expand this movement on a national level." Keanu exhaled, his mind racing. This was huge. "I'd be honored, sir," he finally said. Charlie let out an excited bark, as if he knew he was about to embark on another adventure. Charlie's to Washington. A week later, Keanu and Charlie boarded a private jet headed for Washington, D.C. The moment they stepped onto the White House grounds, it was clear that Charlie was a star. Secret Service agents, political aides, and even the First Lady herself bent down to pet him as he wagged his tail in excitement. The official ceremony was held in the Rose Garden, where the President personally awarded Keanu and Charlie with the Presidential Medal of Humanitarian Excellence. As Keanu stood at the podium, Charlie at his side, he took a deep breath before speaking. I never thought my life's greatest role would be standing beside a dog who was once rejected for being too kind. He began, his voice steady. Charlie wasn't meant for the police force. He was meant for something bigger, to remind us all that kindness is not a weakness. It is the most powerful force in the world. The audience erupted into applause, and Charlie, oblivious to the grandeur of the moment, simply wagged his tail, happy to be surrounded by new friends. An unexpected twist, a mission in NED. After the ceremony, as Keanu was preparing to return to Los Angeles, a government official approached him. "Mr. Reeves, there's something we'd like to discuss," the man said, his expression serious. Keanu nodded. "Go on." The official handed him a classified folder. Inside were photos and reports of an ongoing crisis, families struggling in disaster-stricken areas, veterans suffering from PTSD, children displaced due to unforeseen tragedies. "We believe your program could make a real difference here," the man continued. "We want to officially partner with you to train and deploy therapy dogs across the nation, with federal support." Keanu's mind reeled. This was huge. What had started as a single dog's rejection had now turned into something that would shake the world forever. He looked down at Charlie, who looked up at him with his usual warmth. Then, with a nod, Keanu made his decision. "We're in." The LEJC of a doggy named Charlie. Years later, Charlie's Kindness Initiative had expanded globally. Therapy dogs were now stationed in hospitals, schools, refugee camps, and crisis zones. Thousands of people, children, veterans, families had been touched by the warmth and kindness of dogs who had been given a second chance. Charlie, now older, had become a symbol of hope, love, and second chances. One evening, as the sun set over Keanu's home, he sat on the porch, watching Charlie rest peacefully beside him. "You changed the world, buddy," he whispered, running his fingers through the old dog's fur. Charlie let out a soft sigh, his tail thumping once. He didn't need words. He had already spoken through the lives he had changed. Because kindness had always been his mission, and it always would be. Charlie's final mission, a hero's journey beyond time. The world had changed. What began as a single dog's rejection had ignited a global movement, one that had transformed the way people viewed kindness, therapy, and the unbreakable bond between humans and animals. Hospitals, schools, crisis centers, and even international peace missions had welcomed therapy dogs trained under the Charlie's Kindness Initiative. What once seemed like a small act of fate had grown into something far greater than anyone could have imagined. Charlie was no longer just a dog. He was a symbol, a reminder that sometimes the most unexpected souls end up making the biggest difference. But as time passed, so did the reality that no hero, no matter how great, could outrun the hands of time. Charlie was getting older, and his final mission was yet to come. The day everything changed. It was a crisp autumn afternoon in Los Angeles. Keanu sat on the porch of his secluded home in the Hollywood Hills, sipping tea, while Charlie lay beside him. His once bright golden fur was now streaked with patches of silver, his movements slower, more deliberate. But his eyes, those deep, knowing eyes, still held the same warmth, the same kindness that had changed the world. Keanu watched as Charlie lifted his head slightly, ears twitching as if listening to something far away. "What is it, buddy?" Keanu murmured, setting his cup down. Charlie let out a small whimper, not one of pain, something else, a sound Keanu had never quite heard before. It was almost as if he knew something was coming. Then, as if fate had heard them, Keanu's phone rang. "Marcus." Keanu answered immediately. "What's up?" There was urgency in Marcus' voice. "Keanu, we've got a situation. You need to get to the training center now." Keanu tensed. What happened? Marcus hesitated for a moment. "It's Charlie. AKA for HELP. Charlie's final mission." By the time Keanu and Charlie arrived at the training center, the entire facility was in chaos. Trainers and volunteers were rushing back and forth. Reporters had already arrived, cameras rolling, flashing lights illuminating the night. Keanu pushed through the crowd. "Marcus," he called. Marcus turned, his face grim. "Keanu, it's bad." They entered the medical wing of the facility. Inside, a team of veterinarians hovered around a small, trembling dog, one of the therapy trainees, a young German shepherd named Theo. "He's not going to make it," one of the vets said quietly. "His vitals are dropping too fast." Keanu frowned. "What's wrong with him?" "No one knows," Marcus said. "He was fine this morning. But now, it's like he's shutting down." Keanu felt a weight settle in his chest. Charlie, who had been standing beside him, suddenly stepped forward. He sniffed Theo gently, then lay down beside him, pressing his body against the younger dog. The room fell silent. Theo's breathing, which had been erratic and shallow, suddenly began to steady. The vets exchanged glances. "What the hell?" one whispered. Keanu knelt beside them, watching as Charlie rested his head against Theo's. His body was still, his breathing slow but strong. It was as if he was giving the younger dog something unseen, something beyond medical understanding. Theo let out a small whimper then. After hours of struggle, his eyes slowly fluttered open. The tension in the room broke. People gasped. Keanu exhaled, his chest tight. "He saved him," Marcus whispered. Keanu turned to look at Charlie. And that's when he saw it. Charlie was smiling, but there was something else in his eyes. A knowing, a farewell. The moment no one was ready for. That night, back at home, Keanu lay beside Charlie on the floor. The old dog was tired, more tired than he had ever been. Keanu ran a hand through his fur, his throat tightening. "You did good, buddy," he whispered. "You did better than anyone ever could." Charlie sighed, his tail giving one final wag. Keanu felt something shatter inside him. Because he knew. This was it. Charlie had spent his whole life healing others, bringing light to the darkest places. And now, it was time for him to rest. Keanu stayed beside him, whispering stories from their journey together. Of the little girl, Mia, whose laughter had returned because of him. Of the veterans, the orphans, the survivors, countless lives touched by one simple act of kindness. And as the moonlight poured into the room, Charlie let out one last breath, a soft, peaceful exhale. Then, the world became quiet. Keanu closed his eyes, and for the first time in a long time, he wept. A new world in morning, but ALEJC lay unbroken. The news spread fast. Headlines flooded the internet. Charlie, the dog who changed the world, has passed away. Farewell to a hero. Charlie's legacy lives on. Messages of grief poured in from every corner of the world. Hospitals sent videos of children who had met Charlie, holding drawings of him with teary smiles. Veterans left their military medals at the Charlie's Kindness Initiative headquarters as a final salute. Even the president issued a statement. Charlie was more than just a dog. He was a reminder of what the world needs more of: love, loyalty, and kindness. His legacy will never be forgotten. And Keanu, he didn't speak to the media. He didn't make a statement. He simply sat in the quiet of his home, looking at an empty dog bed. For the first time in years, the house felt silent. But then, his phone buzzed. It was Marcus. "Keanu," he said, his voice soft but full of something new. "You need to come back to the center. There's something you have to see." Keanu almost said no. But then he looked at Charlie's old collar, resting on the table. And he knew. This wasn't the end. Not yet. The unexpected miracle. The LGNDQONTNUEs. When Keanu arrived at the center, Marcus led him to the training yard. And there, in the middle of the field, sat a small golden puppy. His fur was the same golden hue as Charlie's. His eyes held the same warmth. And when Keanu knelt down, the puppy trotted over, nuzzling against him without hesitation. Keanu's breath caught in his throat. Where did he come from?" he whispered. Marcus grinned. "No idea. He just showed up." Keanu looked at the puppy, his heart pounding. And then, in a moment that defied logic, defied everything he knew, the puppy wagged his tail, the exact way Charlie used to. Keanu smiled, a tear slipping down his face. "Welcome home, buddy. The LEJC we never die is the heart of Charlie's. And so, the world's greatest dog may have left this life. But his spirit, his love, his kindness, it would never fade. Because heroes don't die. They just pass the torch. And somewhere, out there, Charlie was still watching and smiling. The Legion reborn, Charlie's spirit, LIVS. The PUPY that APPARED from nowhere. The golden-furred puppy sat in the training center's yard, staring up at Keanu with those warm, knowing eyes. It had been only weeks since Charlie had passed, and yet here he was. A new life, a new beginning, sitting right in front of him. Keanu knelt down, his breath caught in his throat. The puppy tilted his head, then, without hesitation, jumped into Keanu's arms, nuzzling into his chest as if he had been waiting for this moment all along. Marcus, standing nearby, scratched his beard. "You know what I think." Keanu looked up, still overwhelmed. Marcus grinned. "I think Charlie sent him." Keanu exhaled, a small smile creeping onto his face. He pulled back to look at the puppy, who licked his nose enthusiastically. Maybe Marcus was right. Maybe some things in life couldn't be explained. Maybe this wasn't an accident. Maybe it was fate. Keanu gently stroked the puppy's soft fur. "All right, buddy. You've got big shoes to fill." The puppy barked happily. And just like that, a new journey began. A world waiting for hope. Even though the world had mourned Charlie's passing, his movement hadn't slowed. More therapy dogs were being trained, more lives were being changed. Schools, hospitals, and crisis centers across the globe were requesting help, and the Charlie's Kindness Initiative had grown into an unstoppable force of healing. But Keanu knew this was just the beginning. As he watched the new puppy play with some of the other young recruits, an idea formed in his mind. What if they could do more than just train therapy dogs? What if they could change the way the world looked at kindness? The next step. At Global Mission, Keanu sat down with Marcus, Grace, and several key members of the initiative. They had all gathered in a meeting room at the training center, ready to discuss the future. "Charlie started this," Keanu began, looking around the table. "But we're at a crossroads now. We have a chance to take this movement beyond anything we've ever imagined." Grace, the PR expert who had helped spread Charlie's story, nodded. "The world is watching, Keanu. People don't just love Charlie, they believe in what he stood for. We need to give them something to rally behind." Marcus leaned forward. "So what's the plan?" Keanu took a deep breath. "We go global." Silence. Then Grace spoke. "You mean an international program?" Keanu nodded. "We expand. More training centers. More dogs. We set up branches in major cities across the world. We create a program so that anyone, no matter where they are, can benefit from a therapy dog." Marcus grinned. "You're talking about the biggest therapy dog movement in history." Keanu met his gaze. "Yes." The room was silent for a beat. Then, one by one, they all nodded. It was time. The Charlie Global Initiative was born. Training the AE next generation, including one very special PUBPY. Over the next few months, the expansion began. Centers were built in New York, London, Tokyo, and Sydney. Trainers were brought in from around the world. Shelters were contacted, and rescue dogs were given a second chance, not just to find homes, but to become heroes. And at the heart of it all was the puppy. Keanu hadn't named him yet. He wanted to wait, to get to know him, to see what felt right. But there was no doubt. The pup had something. He had the same boundless energy Charlie had, the same intuition, the same ability to sense emotions before people even spoke. Marcus watched him closely. "I've trained a lot of dogs in my life," he admitted one afternoon. "But this one, he's different." Keanu smirked. "Tell me about it." The puppy was a natural. He followed Keanu everywhere, watching, learning, sensing. And then, one day, the perfect name came to Keanu. He looked down at the pup, ruffling his fur. "Phoenix." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Phoenix." Keanu smiled. "Because he rose from the ashes of something great, just like this movement, just like Charlie." Marcus grinned. "I like it." The puppy wagged his tail as if he approved. And with that, Phoenix became the face of the new era. A CAL from NASA. The impossible OPPORTUMANITOI. Just as the initiative was gaining momentum, Keanu received a call he never expected. A representative from NASA had reached out. "Yes, NASA," Grace emphasized when she delivered the news. "They want to meet with you." Keanu frowned. "NASA? What does a therapy dog initiative have to do with space?" Grace handed him a document. "They're working on something big. A psychological support program for astronauts going on long-term space missions. They think therapy dogs could be a key part of it." Keanu blinked. "You're telling me NASA wants to send therapy dogs into space?" Grace shrugged. "It's not as crazy as it sounds." Keanu ran a hand through his hair, looking down at Phoenix, who sat at his feet, wagging his tail. "All right," he said finally. "Let's hear them out." The MEETING at NASA. A mission beyond Earth. Days later, Keanu arrived at NASA headquarters, Phoenix trotting proudly beside him. They were escorted into a sleek conference room, where a team of scientists and psychologists were waiting. Dr. Emily Carter, a leading expert in space psychology, began the presentation. "Long-term space travel is mentally and emotionally taxing," she explained. "Astronauts spend months, sometimes years, in isolation. We've tested numerous methods to keep morale up, but nothing works as well as companionship." Keanu listened carefully. Dr. Carter continued. "That's where you come in. We've studied Charlie's initiative. The impact therapy dogs have on mental health is undeniable. We want to integrate therapy dogs into future missions, to be companions for astronauts, to reduce stress, to keep the human spirit strong, even in the void of space." Keanu leaned back in his chair. "And you're saying you want Phoenix to be the first?" Dr. Carter smiled. "We want Phoenix to be part of history. A DCSAJON, that QUDCHANGEV thing." That night, Keanu sat alone in his backyard. Phoenix curled up beside him. Could he really send this dog, the one who carried Charlie's spirit, into the unknown? He looked up at the stars. Charlie had changed the world. Maybe Phoenix was meant to go beyond it. With a deep breath, he made his decision. The next morning, he called Dr. Carter. "We're in the ECA future. Charlie's lead JC Uli among the STRs." And so, history was made. Phoenix was trained in NASA's astronaut program. He learned how to navigate weightlessness, how to interact with astronauts in confined spaces, how to provide comfort even in the vast emptiness of space. And when the day finally came, as the rocket stood on the launch pad, ready to carry the first therapy dog into orbit, Keanu stood beside Phoenix, stroking his fur. "You're gonna do great, buddy." Phoenix licked his hand. And as the countdown began, Keanu whispered one final thing. "This is for you, Charlie." Then, the engines roared. And as Phoenix soared into the stars, Charlie's legacy reached beyond Earth itself. Beyond TTESTRs, Phoenix's journey And final message from Charlie. Launch day. The world holds its breath. The countdown echoed across the launch site. T-10, 9, 8. Millions of people around the world were glued to their screens. This wasn't just any space mission. This was history. On board the sleek, state-of-the-art NASA spacecraft, Phoenix, the first therapy dog in space, sat calmly, suited up in a custom-designed harness. Even in the chaos of the mission, his golden fur and warm eyes reminded everyone of why they were here. Phoenix was more than a dog. He was a symbol of hope, of love, of Charlie's legacy carried beyond Earth. 3, 2, 1. Liftoff. The engines roared to life, shaking the ground as flames and smoke engulfed the launch pad. In the heart of the craft, nestled among astronauts and state-of-the-art equipment, Phoenix remained completely calm. Because he wasn't afraid. He knew this was where he was meant to be. A voyage into the unknown. As the spacecraft ascended, Keanu Reeves stood at the NASA Control Center, his fists clenched, his eyes locked on the screen. The image of Phoenix, floating weightlessly inside the craft, was breathtaking. The golden-furred pup adjusted to zero gravity faster than anyone expected. He drifted effortlessly, his tail wagging in slow motion as he made his way toward the astronauts. It was unlike anything anyone had ever seen. The world was watching history unfold. News outlets were already calling it Phoenix. They first doggy in space, who is changing humanity. But what no one expected was that Phoenix's journey was about to take an unimaginable turn. The signal that shook Mesa. 3 days into the mission, everything was running smoothly. Phoenix had adapted beautifully. He was a companion, a healer, a source of comfort in the endless vacuum of space. But then, at exactly 3:17 am, an unidentified signal was detected. It came from beyond the moon. Is that interference? One of the NASA engineers asked, adjusting his headset. Another scientist frowned. No, this is something else. Keanu, who had been sitting quietly, watching the mission unfold, suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. Because the frequency of the signal, it wasn't random. It was Charlie's old K9 frequency. The same one Keanu had used when training with him. And the message, it was repeating. One word. Home. Charlie's final message. The control room fell into stunned silence. That doesn't make sense, Marcus whispered. Charlie's gone. And yet, the signal was there, echoing across the galaxy. Keanu's hands trembled as he stared at the transmission. Was it a glitch, a coincidence, or something more? Phoenix, still aboard the spacecraft, perked his ears up. His tail wagged, as if he recognized it. One of the astronauts, Commander Harrison, turned to the camera. NASA Control, we're requesting permission to investigate the signal. The debate among scientists erupted. Some argued it was too risky. Others believed it was an opportunity unlike any other. And Keanu, he didn't hesitate. Follow it, he said, his voice steady. Charlie wouldn't lead us anywhere we weren't meant to go. The journey light to the unknown. The spacecraft altered its course. They moved beyond the moon, beyond the known checkpoints of space travel. As they got closer to the signal's origin, something remarkable happened. Phoenix began moving toward one of the observation windows. His tail wagged. His ears perked up. And then, he barked. Not a normal bark. A bark of recognition, of excitement. The astronauts crowded around the window. And what they saw defied all logic. The vision of I-A-M-E-S-S-A-G across time. Floating in the void of space, where nothing should have existed, was a faint golden light. And within that light, a shape. Not a star. Not debris. A dog. Keanu watched from the control room. his heart pounding. The cameras zoomed in. The outline of the figure was unmistakable. It was Charlie, or rather, something that looked like him. His golden fur shimmered like stardust. His eyes held that same warmth, that same kindness. And for a brief moment, time seemed to stand still. No one spoke. No one breathed. Then the figure tilted its head, looking directly at Phoenix. And that single word, home, echoed once more through the transmission. Then, just as suddenly as it appeared, the vision faded, and the signal was gone. The final Blisson, Lovi and EV or Levies. Back in the control center, tears streamed down Keanu's face. He wasn't the only one. Even the scientists, men and women of cold, hard logic, were shaken, because they had just witnessed something beyond science, something beyond space, beyond time. Phoenix let out a soft whimper aboard the spacecraft, his eyes still fixed on where Charlie had been. And Keanu, his voice thick with emotion, whispered, he was never gone. Because Charlie's spirit hadn't faded. His mission wasn't over. He had led them here, not just to discover something new about the universe, but to remind them of what really mattered. That no matter where you are, on Earth, in space, or somewhere beyond, love never disappears. It only finds new ways to show itself. The legend of CHARL, i.e., eternal. The spacecraft returned home safely. The footage of the event was analyzed, debated, and eventually classified. But for those who witnessed it, there was no doubt. Charlie's legacy wasn't just a movement. It wasn't just about therapy dogs. It was about something bigger than all of us. A reminder that the bonds we create in life, the love we give, the kindness we show, don't end when we leave. They become part of something eternal. And Phoenix, he carried Charlie's mission forward. Not just on Earth, not just in space, but everywhere. Because kindness, love, loyalty, those things transcend time. They'd never die. And neither did Charlie. Because heroes don't fade. They just become the stars that guide us home.